Hey everyone, my name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology of 2023. Sort of in the chit chat before we started the webinar, I was saying that there's a lot to get through. So, as always, I think I initially planned to do webinars for an hour and a half, but they keep creeping up. I'm going to try to keep this around 2.5 hours. It's of course it's a lot of for me to say, but also for those that are sort of watching live. Here's some quick housekeeping rules. We'll just sort of keep our microphones and videos off in the meantime, and we'll do a Q&A at the end. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, and just by the way, if you have questions while we are moving along, you can put them in the chat and I will answer them at the end of each section. So let's start sharing the screen. So hang on, let me just. So this is your look at the astrology of 2023. I can't believe that we're here at 2023 already. Hang on, just letting some more people into the room. As I record this, apparently my computer thinks it's December 25th, but that should read, and I'll fix it in the final PDF. This is December 15th, 2023. Apparently, I'm already in Mercury retrograde. My name is Katie Sweetman. For those that don't know, I am an astrologer and psychic medium here in the New York City area. I'm just across the river in New Jersey, and I started empowering astrology in 2010 because at the time I felt like there wasn't the type of astrology that I wanted to talk about or I wanted to read. And here we are, like 12, almost 13 years later, and I do blend the mediumship into my work. I know a lot of you are my clients, but for our purposes today, it's more astrologically based. Sometimes I do get sort of feelings about maybe where things are going, but something that something that my guides say over and over again is that the future is not fixed, and astrology is just a framework, and we have to live in that framework. Wait, somebody's.
And the answer we received.
Somebody please mute themselves. Okay, I'm just going to mute. So just please be mindful because you are now on the official recording. Here's our agenda for today. So we're going to have a little introduction. When I look at the astrology for the coming year, and I know some of you know how much I love Saturn, but Saturn is the major timekeeper of the astrology. We're also going to look at the lunar nodes and the story arc. That's what the lunar nodes do, apart from making eclipses happen. They talk about the story arc of the year. Also, these sort of larger evolutionary forces. We have Pluto. Pluto is going to go into Aquarius. That is definitely the big thing for 2023. It's not the only thing, but certainly the biggest thing. And how Uranus and Pluto, they're talking about these forces of evolution. Then we'll take a look just very briefly at what Jupiter and the personal planets are doing. And then we'll do a sign-by-sign look at each of the 12 signs. So part one, introduction. We're in a time of endings and beginnings. So Saturn and Pluto, lunar nodes, they change signs. And in 2023, we're seeing a couple of things happening. We're coming to the end of a large chapter, Pluto starting to leave Capricorn and go into Aquarius, Saturn leaving Aquarius to go into Pisces, and then we also have the lunar nodes changing signs. Astrology is just time. So it's like we're looking at a clock and a couple of the hands on the astrology clock start to point in a new direction or a new hour. And what does this mean? Not just for us individually, but what does this mean for us collectively? Pisces and Aquarius, if you know your astrology, these are the two last signs of the zodiac. Aquarius followed by Pisces. Pisces is the very last sign of the zodiac. And from a thematic standpoint, we're starting to look towards these larger themes. Pisces is not a personal sign, neither is Aquarius. Aquarius talks about the collective, society, humanity, these larger social themes or social constructs. And then we get into Pisces, which doesn't talk about planet Earth. It talks about the world outside of this world, our non-manifested world, which we'll get into. Then we also have the new beginnings, because we're going to start to have eclipses in Aries. And Aries is the first sign, sort of the alpha to Pisces is Omega. We're coming out of a period of major structural change. And I know you're like, well, no duh, Katie, like, pandemic and 2020. But yes, and the astrology has been parallel to that. So since 2020, the astrology has been saying that we are in a time of major structural change. And you're like, well, you can just look outside, so to speak, and be like, yeah, we are in a time of major structural change. Well, that's because we had a lot of things happening in what are called the fixed signs. Saturn, it went into Aquarius in March of 2020. Yes, March of 2020. And it immediately began to pick up on the energy of Uranus and Taurus. Taurus is a fixed sign. And while it wasn't until 2021 that we had the 3 Saturn-Uranus squares, that energy was sort of in the room with us in 2020. We really saw it take shape and take form in 2021. And then we revisited it in 2022. That's why 2022 was kind of very similar in its seismic shifts and changes. We've been letting go of the dead. I mean, I'm a Scorpio, so I don't mind using the D word. Why am I saying the dead? Well, South Node since January, it's been in Scorpio, and it's going to be in Scorpio until July of 2023. The South Node is a point of release, a point of endings. It's also a place where we have to do some deeper work, some whether personal work or collective karmic work. But Scorpio, as 1/4 of the fixed signs, it's part of the fixed cross that talks about death and decay. And it reminds us that death and decay is an intrinsic part of life. It's not pleasant, but again, it's a part of life. So the South Node's in Scorpio, and so whether it's thematic, death can come in a lot of different forms. Maybe you feel there's more death in your life. I'm saying this to be real, of course, not to kind of sensationalize it, but it's just sort of for us to be more reflective that this is a period where it's structural change, but it's also things are leaving our life. In 2023, we're diving into deep waters. Why? Well, Saturn, which I said a few moments ago is the major timekeeper of astrology, it goes into Pisces. Pisces is a water sign, and it's the last water sign. It's not my emotions, it's our emotions. My feelings, it's everybody's feelings. It's not the water of motherhood or Cancer, the ocean. It's the cosmic mother. It's the cosmic ocean. And we're going into this space, Pisces, that doesn't talk about our physical world. In the zodiac, we've gone beyond Saturn. We're now at the last sign of the zodiac, which is Pisces, and it's ruled by Jupiter. This is perhaps the start of some major societal shifts. Question mark. I mean, that's the thing. Nobody alive on this planet, unless you are an immortal being, which who knows at this point, but Pluto was last in Aquarius 250 years ago, so the 1780s and 1790s. Pluto's going to start to go into Aquarius. It's going to be a process. If Pluto goes into Aquarius, goes out of Aquarius in June, it goes back in January, it leaves, and then it's back in Aquarius by November of 2024. What's going to happen? I don't know. I can't use history as a marker. But what we can say is, because Saturn's been in Aquarius, is that these larger themes, social issues, social causes, society, humanity, systems, networks, technology, this is going to be a front and center for 20 years. again, that's like a macro cycle. So it's really hard to get a grip on it. My joke about Pluto and Aquarius is that we'll just all become robots by the end. So it doesn't matter. But I think this is a time where something has to shift, and Pluto being Pluto, it shows us the shadow side of something, which we'll get into in a moment. And then we're going to start to have eclipses in Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. We will have one more eclipse in Taurus in 2023, one more eclipse in Scorpio. So we're closing out that chapter, which we'll get into more in a moment. But we do have that first eclipse in Aries on April 20th. Aries, very different energy from Pisces. It's not sort of this larger, broader theme or broader context. It's personal. Aries is a very self-motivated, individualistic leadership sign. And I say that positively, but it's a time when we all have to sort of take action, take the lead, individuate, but also at the same time navigate, because the South Node is going to be in Libra, navigate these larger themes around relationship and how do we find the balance between us and other people. So every year I get asked the magic question, when is it going to get better? I remember when my mom was alive, she was just like, when is it going to get better? And I was like, Mom, it's not that it's not going to get better. It's that it's now going from level 2022 to level 2023. That's a very different level than level 2020, which I'm sure we all can kind of collectively say kind of sucked, but it was what it was. But this is where, even if, we go, and I'm just saying this not as a prediction, just sort of as a compare and contrast, even if we went through something like that again, how do we make the best of it? How do we take something and allow it to be its best expression or open up something inside of us? So while I think there will continue to be difficult astrology, and I'm saying that very neutrally, it's just hard. It's hard not to be punitive hard. It's hard to create an evolutionary change within ourselves, an evolutionary change within the world, hopefully for the better. Remember, astrology is just time. It's just the energy of time and how we live time. Astrology does not measure social metrics. It does not measure what we think is like better on a social level. It's just structure of time. It's like, okay, it's time for relationships, but relationships in one society look very different than relationships in another society, or relationships 200 years ago looked very different than relationships now. Nevertheless, same time. So how are you going to live it? And I think that's where astrology is actually very valuable, because we understand what is it, the structure of time, and how do we live it. Here it is in the Northern Hemisphere. It's a week before the solstice, the winter solstice. It's pretty flipping cold here in the New York City area. So how do I live this time? Well, it's cold. I wear a coat. I can choose not to wear a coat. I can go outside in my summer outfit, but I will be miserable. So that's the part where we can't control the weather. We can't control the fact that the earth has tilted at a certain degree away from the sun. Ergo, it's cold in the Northern Hemisphere, hot in the Southern Hemisphere. And then how do we live it? That part's on us. Like I was saying, difficult astrology can be the recipe, it can be the ingredient for powerful breakthroughs. I had really interesting conversations with people in 2020, and they were, asking themselves and being reflective on, how can they make the most of this time? So even though we have, Pluto starting its major shift, Pluto is sort of picking up on these larger questions that maybe we've been asking ourselves since 2020. It's just a different phase. As I was saying earlier, in 2023, we see an emphasis on the last two signs of the zodiac. Last two signs of the zodiac are not about me. It's not about you. It's about all of us, Aquarius, and everything Pisces. If Aquarius is our world, then Pisces is all of creation. I know that that's a big statement, but we're at the end of the zodiac It's not about the small things. But then the beginning of the zodiac, Aries, it's about the self and I and the individual. This is like the $1 million question. It's related to what I was saying a few moments ago. Like, why? Like, why are we in this passage of time? I don't know, but we are. And I think we can collectively agree that as we look back over the last 10, 15 years, it's just different. It just is. Why? Again, I don't know, but maybe we can all find something powerful in this time. Here's where, when we go through difficult things, and I know some of you, you're my clients, and I know your personal stories, and you've had really big losses. What do you do with this time? I mean, it's one thing to be like, okay, Katie, I'm going to try to live at my best, but I think there's some practicality that we all have to connect to as we go into the new year. And I think, honestly, throughout the rest of our life, it's how do we nourish the spark, the flame, the fire? The first element in astrology is fire. We're going to see fire with Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. Fire is about the spark of life. And if we are feeling absolutely tired and run down by everything that's happening, certainly a lot of the stuff in the fixed signs has really moved some things. How do we get back to the spark of life? And maybe that's one of the beautiful gifts of having the North Node in Aries and having the eclipses in Aries.